I'm saying, yeah, we can start letting people in now. And I mean, I could start playing the song now before they come in.
All right. In 2 minutes, you can start playing the song.
Come again?
In 2 minutes, you can start playing the song.
Who is playing it? You or Calando?
No, Calando.
I'm going to play.
Yeah, he's gonna. All right, so I'm going to start letting people know. Recording is on.
File sent.
Okay, great. Start playing.
Which day is that? What time? Yeah.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, Bertino.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
Hi, this is Robert Alabes from London Consulting.
Oh, great. Great to have you. Welcome.
Thank you.
We will start in the next 2-3 minutes. So bear with us as we
Good afternoon.
Hello, this is Peter on the webinar.
Okay, great. Great to have you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, Marlene Thompson, hi.
Oh. Hi, Marlene. Welcome. Thanks for coming.
Hi, morning. This is Michael.
Oh, Michael.
Hi, this is Olivine.
Oh, hi, Olivine. Thanks for joining.
Hi, this is Donna Hale.
Hello, Mrs. Hale, Sales Manager for MC Systems. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Donna.
Chronics, one called I Can, extending a little encouragement as we welcome you. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Staying in Business During and After COVID-19. We started off there with I Can by Chronics. It's about 2 years old and nearly 10 million views on YouTube. So how's about them numbers? A song of hope and possibility to inspire entrepreneurs and business leaders to look ahead in preparation for life after COVID. My name is Kalando, and on behalf of MC Systems and the partners Jamaica Chamber of Commerce, the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association, and the organization of Jamaica, I welcome you to this final of 2 webinar sessions. I think somebody's still giving us a little bit of the icon. Okay. All right, Nathaniel, I think you're controlling the music. We'll just proceed without it for the time being. If you could pause the audio there. All right, thank you. I think we were a little caught off guard there. All right, no worries. So after we've come over that glitch, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. As I said, welcome to part 3 of our 3-part series, Staying in Business During and After COVID-19. So what are we going to talk about today? Today, it's all about the case for analytics and how we will utilize data to make informed business decisions to prepare us for more business during and after this Corona time. With us this afternoon, we have Larren Peart, CEO of BlueDot. We've got Larry Watson, immediate past president of the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce and general manager of Industrial Sales Limited, a member company of CEPROD. And we've got Dr. Parris Lyew-Ayee Jr, director of Mona GeoInformatics Institute at the University of the West Indies. And he's also an Eisenhower Fellow. We're going to be recording the session, so you will be able to hear these discussions again. And we ask that if your video is on while you are joining us today, please be mindful that when we're recording, we're going to pick up all the stuff that's happening in your background, so you can do your best to control that. We're also going to ask that if you could be kind enough to put some feedback on the session, and if you've attended more than one, we would take your feedback on any number of sessions you've attended, but certainly today, you could put some feedback in the chat. So before we dive right into it, we do have 4 things that we'd like to remind you of. Try to stay muted for as much of the session as possible. Clearly, unless you are going to share a question, ask a question, or share some sort of comment, we ask that you remain muted. Try to minimize movement while you have your camera on. As I said, we are taping, and of course, having a camera on is optional. If you have any questions, you can post them in the chat, or you can use your microphone at the time of when we allow for question. I am going to acknowledge that there's going to be a specific point when I take questions. So if you want, you can post them in the chat in the meantime. We'll grab them and ask them at the particular time, or at that time when we announce it, you can just turn your mic on and pose your question. And we ask you to try and control and manage the quietness of your environment as best as possible. We are mindful people are working from home, and there are children and other things that are happening because other people are using the space as well. And so, but just as best as possible. We'd like to draw your attention right now to a program that the PSOJ is doing, the COVID-19 Jamaica, the PSOJ COVID-19 Jamaica Response Fund. If you are able to donate to this fund, we ask you to visit the psoj.org, and you can get all the information there. The fund is designed to help about in excess of 20 communities, people who are in these communities who have been hardest hit by the pandemic and the lockdown, etc. And so the program is trying to provide food and other health services, certainly making donations of care packages every 2 weeks to these communities between now and July. And the fund, they're hoping to raise 250 million. They're just about 120. And so if your company or anyone you know, or if you would like to help these people who are at risk and people who have been displaced, people who are vulnerable, we will really appreciate your help. In fact, Dr. Lyew-Ayee had actually helped with putting all that data together for the PSOJ to decide precisely where the people are who were most impacted, and how they and what are the criteria that would allow them to be selected as a beneficiary of this fund.
We're going to hear a little bit more about that later. But as I said, psoj.org is the email address, and you'll see all the information about donation there. So we often hear about causing disruption in business through world-changing innovations or some kind of technology. However, since March 2020, Jamaica, COVID-19 has been the biggest disruptor in business, causing companies to have to level up in how they provide goods and services to consumers, and even how they look at data. Services such as delivery and curbside pickups are now the reality for retailers, grocers, and eateries. Supply chain management have either increased or decreased due to changing customer behavior. Many companies had to make these decisions without much time, for deliberations, and quite possibly without insights from data. But who could blame them? It was either that they did something or simply allowed the COVID tides to sweep them over or sweep them out of existence. But we're at about 8 weeks in, and we're kind of past the time when we need to be doing some inward looking and examine what's going on in the business with all the numbers, the dollars, and the data. So using business intelligence as a technology-driven process for analyzing data and presenting actionable information is a foolproof way to improve business. In today's discussion, though, we're going to explore how business intelligence can inform a secure, productive, and successful business future during Corona times, and to take a quick look into the possibilities of the future impact of this disease and how BI can help you to manage that impact. Our experts today, as we said, Larren Peart, CEO of BlueDot, Larry Watson, former immediate past president of JCC and GM of International Sales, and Dr. Parris Lyew-Ayee from the Mona GeoInformatics Institute. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Welcome. As I said, folks, we're going to take your questions throughout the presentation so you can post them as you have them. All right, so to get us started, we're going to ask Larren to share his findings on trends and opportunities that COVID-19 has brought to business, to the sector. And these are trends and opportunities we believe that business leaders need to be paying attention to right now. Welcome, Larren. You can go ahead.
Thank you, Colin, and thank you everyone for joining, and thank you to MC Systems for the opportunity to be a part of the session. So I just have a very quick presentation. I hope everyone is seeing my screen.
Yes, we're seeing it now.
Okay, so for those who don't know, at BlueDot we are an insights agency, and just in short, that means that we help our clients to make decisions with data or with insights. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about data-driven decision making and the reasons why. And to start it off, I'll share a study that we did recently on Easterborn consumption. So if you're seeing my screen, then some of the key highlights would be that compared to 2019, 63% of households in Jamaica bought less Easterborn than they did this year, 2020, than they did last year. 27% of them said they bought around the same, and interestingly, 6.8% said they bought more. On the other side, 48% of the respondents, and the sample size was 400, said that in 2019 they received bonds that's either from most of them were from the workplace. This year, only 13% of them. And so what that means means is that workplaces or employers did not give the customary allocation of bonds this year. In terms of hard numbers, so generally there are 3 bonds were issued or gifted in 2019. This year, 2, and of the sample, only 70% of the sample said that they actually purchased this year. So this highlights a very quick shift in consumer behavior. So Easter would have been just a few weeks after the first case was announced, 10th this year. And within just a few days or weeks, we were able to see how much consumer behavior has started to shift. And this was shocking to us as an insights agency because, having bun for Easter is a cultural phenomenon for us here in Jamaica, and pockets were affected in such a short space of time really tells a story. All right, so quickly, just to highlight, you know, as a business, how do you go about collecting data? What customers want? So, what do customers want? Or why do customers choose your service or business? You have what they're looking for. You're physically located to them. Your pricing structure is aligned with their budget. You hopefully have good marketing campaigns, and you are, most importantly, you are receptive to the needs of your customers and react in a timely manner. And as business owners, this is not changing. As business owners, our main aim is to gain new customers, retain existing customers, and keep them coming back again and again, and also to edge out the competition. And how do we do this? We do this with insights. So in what is called the knowledge pyramid, you have data at the bottom, insights in the middle, if you can picture a pyramid, and knowledge at the top. And an example of that pyramid, if I were to give an example, would be if you were to look at soda sales in Jamaica and looking at the data, you would see that in St. Thomas there are high sales of cream soda in St. Thomas. We would use someone like Parris's organization to help us determine the why, or BlueDot. And in short, the why would be because, and this is a fact actually, Wisynco actually sells more cream soda in St. Thomas because of Obia, because it's an important ingredient in the practice. But the point of that is looking at data. You need to be able to understand the data that you have, then analyze it and mine it, and then get the insights from it in order to give you the knowledge to act upon it. Basic principles in terms of the keys to success are to understand your customers and give them what they want, when they want it, how they want it, and where they want it. But the biggest challenge to that is that not all customers are equal, nor are their requirements, nor do they stay the same, and customers are influenced by internal and external factors. So, you know, there's the famous saying, you know, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And the key to that is that you need to be able, as business owners, to profile your consumers and to profile your customers. It is no longer acceptable or prudent for you to be broad brushing your marketing campaigns. There is no what is called hyper targeting, which allows you to target your individual customers on an individual level. And to wrap up, customer purchasing behavior, which is key, is what are your customers buying today? What will they need tomorrow? And are they buying the same things? And from a business standpoint, is what we use data to tell is you know, identify what is sales and opportunities for forecasting, what items need restocking, what promotional campaigns are driving more traffic, and how would sales be affected if you increase the price. And all of this will be determined by properly understanding the data that you have, collecting the data, understanding it, mining it for the insights to spot trends, insights, and opportunities. Over to you, Kalana.
All right, Larren, thank you so much for that. Quickly snapshot of, you know, but certainly how Easter Bund and the bond companies managed during that time. I suppose we can all just kind of assume how things went there. So you would have been able to test, you know, run that clearly. I don't know. I would assume that some company that sells bonds would have asked you to take a look at that, or for whatever reason. If you were to tell me, give me a sense of, from your side, the type of insight you provide for businesses, how many Jamaican businesses, in your estimation, you think are using analytics to make certain decisions?
I would say, if I had to guesstimate, and it's probably a very close guesstimation. I would say definitely less than 10% of businesses are using consumer behavior to make decisions. Businesses less than 10%. Businesses may be using, they might be doing some sort of HR analytics or other type of basic analytics with Excel. But in terms of being data driven or using data to data-driven decision making, I'd say definitely less than 10%. And just to add, the mission of BlueDot is to eliminate the culture as much as possible that we have here of making gut decisions. We can no longer afford to make gut decisions because our consumers are much more sophisticated and complex these days and have many more options than they did before.
Is it that they're really more complex and sophisticated, or we are able to detect that complexity and sophistication a lot better because of these tools you have? I mean, have customer behaviors changed that much?
It has, and definitely on the matter of influence, there are a lot more options for them to choose from. There's a lot more noise in the marketplace. So, our current attention span is around 8 seconds. Which is why if you notice on YouTube, the skip ad button comes up after 6 seconds, then that is because they know that if they don't grab your attention within those 6 seconds, you're gone.
Right.
So, there's a lot more external noise and noise that marketers have to, and businesses have to fight in order to get the attention of the consumer.
Okay, why do you think so many businesses are not using more of this insight? I mean, it seems like it makes sense that if I can have precise information about any decision I want to make, then that's the way I should, that's what I should do to drive my business success. From your experience, what's the apprehension?
So like I said, we do have a culture of gut decisions and instinct, boy, I feel the customer going to do this. Or if you have a question, you send it to your WhatsApp group, to your family, you ask your questions, which is a complete biased situation, by the way. But we do have a culture of gut decision making, and also there's a misconception that market research has to be expensive. It not necessarily is. BlueDot for sure has definitely used technology to bring the prices down, and also just in closing, I would say that market research in the strictest sense doesn't mean you have to do market research that way. There is behavioral science or just observational research that you can do in your own stores or business places or just by yourselves. The best marketing managers and brand managers, as an example, in the alcohol space, they go to bars and just sit down and listen to what people are talking about. So again, there is a culture.
To get that data is what you're saying.
Yes, yeah. The insight is important.
Larry, if you could tell me from your experience as a businessman for many years, not aging you or anything, Larry, but what over the years things have changed. How are business leaders responding to the use of this kind of information and this kind of technology that Larren is talking about? And he just said it's less than 10%. Do you know why that is?
Hi, good evening, good afternoon. Well, I can't quantify the 10%. I do think that when businesses and marketing look at data, there are different forms of marketing research that is done. Right. There's a question of focus groups. I know there's a regular omnibus that goes on, and there are polls that are done, and there are in-store techniques. I think what BlueDot has done has brought maybe one could say a new level of sophistication to the research space, and whereas large companies can afford in many instances to do that type of research, smaller companies sometimes find it very difficult, but they do their research maybe in a somewhat unique way. And quite interestingly, you talk about gut feeling, that thing that cream soda selling in St. Thomas because of Obia. I know of a very bitter alcoholic beverage named Campari that I don't know about today, but certainly in the past, over 30% of their sales were in the parish of St. Thomas, albeit for that same reason. So there are different gut feelings that sometimes research can bring home, but people are using data and research. And the question is what, how much they do it. When people are bringing out new products, they will get their market target, put them and do focus groups. So, I think what is available today with social media, with the use of Facebook, Instagram, and they're able to target consumers in a more efficient way rather than sending people out to do 500 or 1,000 person survey. And if one looks, for example, at the last US election, and Cambridge Analytica was able to isolate and do their market targeting within certain states of the US where they know that the current president were weak. And they were able to target there to first of all.
Not hearing anymore, Larry.
You hit mute, Larry.
You mistakenly.
Yes, I'm back.
Yes, go ahead.
Right. So like with Cambridge Analytica, in the last US election, they were able to isolate 300,000 people in Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania that they knew were on the borderline and target particular advertisements at them that they knew were effective because they tested it. So things like Facebook really new opportunities.
They would have used psychographic metrics.
Psychographic profiling, lifestyle profiling, etc. And there's a whole set of demographic profiling that one can do. But it is something that marketers do. It's sometimes difficult for the small business to afford it. But I think, what the new social media platforms allow is for persons for smaller businesses to have the opportunity to get research done and not particularly at phenomenal costs.
Okay, so we can speak specifically to your business, Larry. The operation produces a wide assortment of snacks and confectionaries, and you offer third-party manufacturing and packaging as well. So I don't know if you are able to give us a quick snapshot of how that particular sector might have been impacted by COVID.
Well, the trends that we have found is that the basic food items have kind of risen to the totem pole for a segment of the population. I think of the unemployment rate goes up. We heard the number called in the tourism sector that it was 200,000 persons laid off. So I don't know what the figure is today, but with that happening, persons' salaries, some people's salaries being cut, and the whole income landscape changing, I think people are moving to the direction of basic foods and ground provisions. And this may be more predominant in the middle and lower socioeconomic grouping because those with more means may have the ability to withstand more, but people are watching their bank account. They're not spending on luxury items because there is insecurity about what the future holds. So we have seen a definite shift into the mainstream, 2 or 3 meals a day, and the luxury section have really gone about. It has also come about because of the reduction in the restaurant business. I mean, they have had to go to, curbside pickup and ordering, and even regular fast food outlets, that do chicken, hamburgers, etc., had to move into the delivery service because of what is upon us. So people are reacting quickly, and they are trying to respond to the new reality and the new normal. And I think they will become more efficient at doing it. The longer it goes or the longer it is for a solution to be found to COVID.
All right, I want to come back and talk a little bit about supply chain analytics for your sector, but we are getting some questions already. So I think I'm going to jump quickly to put some questions in. Vaughn is asking, Larren, this is for you at BlueDot. How do you collect your data? Face-to-face or software-driven?
Thank you for that question. So we do both. So we do face-to-face interviews out in the field, as well as luckily for us, we had started our digital transformation a year ago, and we have the first and only panel in the Caribbean. So we have over 6,000 Jamaicans who are part of our online insights community that allows us to target surveys so that we can poll immediately and you get results in real time. And there's a lot of segmentation and profile information available. So if we wanted to send a survey out to females between the age of 25 to 35 who purchase lotto, who have a car loan and have 2 kids, we can select just that segment from the data set and send surveys to them. Thanks.
Okay. All right, I'm going to take another quick.
And if I could just comment there, on data collection, the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce has been doing a business and consumer survey for the last maybe 18 or 19 years. I think we do 100 business for the business confidence and 600 consumer. And in the middle of our Q1, which ended in March, the COVID thing came up. And there was a challenge in reaching the 600, at that time. And I mean, the amount that we got wasn't the 600, but we were able to, I think there was only about a 2% variance in the confidence of the survey. But what it does, it puts in a new dimension. That as we look forward, and I think for political polls too, it's going to become a reality. As our election is due early 2021, in that they're going to sit back now and say, boy, how am I going to get to the consumer because I can't have square parties in Sam Shop or wherever? How am I going to do surveys? Because things like, BlueDot, I'm sure, have is like Survey Monkey, where you have online servicing that one can do. So again, the whole landscape is going to change, and you have to think outside of the box. And how am I going to operate in this new normal?
And this next question might actually bring Parris right into the mix of things. We haven't heard from him yet. Keisha A. Anderson is asking, is data analytics used in government? Is it applicable? I don't know if you want to take that one, Parris, and then we'll dive right into.
I think I'll take the question in my presentation. It's point blank. I answer that question in the presentation.
Okay, 1 second. So I'm going to come back to you then.
And it also answers Keisha's other question as well in terms of unstructured data.
Right. Okay. Good. So, but let me take this one from Amanda. How do you bridge the gap where your target customers are not technologically savvy, but you are unable to collect face-to-face data?
So good question, Amanda, and thank you for asking that question. So what we have is I think we're probably the only, definitely the only company that can now offer nationally representative studies in the manner in which we do. What we have is a mix of both online and offline. So in addition to the online database of over 6,000 Jamaicans, and that number grows daily, we have 4,000 Jamaicans that we call, who represent the offline side of the panel. And those 4,000 Jamaicans are all across all sectors, demographics, so rural, lower income, middle income, older people who aren't technologically savvy, etc. And so what we do is we do a mixed methodology and we combine those two segments in order to create a nationally representative sample.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so we're going to jump. Thank you so much for participating, and can keep the questions coming. We're going to grab them and deal with them if we can. We're going to jump to Parris now, and Parris, to the uninitiated, it may seem easy it's easy to see how the data you capture are good for figuring out the where of a solution, just as we mentioned earlier, in terms of the PSOJ thing, just addressing some social issue, figuring out, where to find people, when they were trying to determine the most vulnerable. But could a business use informatics for its survival during and after COVID? And what exactly is geoinformatics?
Right. Thank you, Kalando. And good afternoon, everyone. Geoinformatics is really about answering the question where. So when you look at how to determine vulnerable communities, what does vulnerable communities actually mean? We need to be able to determine how to direct resources, how to focus a response activity. We mentioned in this discussion about St. Thomas and Obeah, but I can assure you that not all of St. Thomas is uniformly Obeah. So we have to be able to determine how do you move in a particular area. How is Port Morant different from Yallas, different from Bath, different from Albion, and so on. So we have to be able to understand and scale down within particular areas how particular dynamics and things work. We're talking about urban versus rural. We're talking about coastal versus inland. We're talking about tourist areas versus industrial areas versus commercial areas versus straight up residential areas. We're talking about residential areas that are high income, residential areas that are low income. It's very spatial how all of this operates. However, one of the things I wanted to bring the discussion in this afternoon, Larren and Larry have spoken about the business focus and the use of business data. But what I wanted to take you through is the data environment that we're operating in. So if I could ask the next slide to be brought up. So a few years ago, we had the first zone of special operations set in Mount Salem in Montego Bay, and there was a big hue and cry about the definitions and issues and so on. And again, if you could see the front page of the Gleaner on the left, it says here, Security Council admits data blunder. Now let me explain to you what happened here. Next slide, please. There are 3 Mount Salems, right? If you look at the slide on the top right, that's the Mount Salem Police Station response area, right? There's the red area you see on the bottom right and on the left. That is the Mount Salem Zone of Special Operation. And on the left, you see a blue circle enveloping the red circle. That's the Mount Salem community, right here. So the statistics that were used was the statistics for the Mount Salem Police Station that covers an area larger than the community of Mount Salem and certainly larger than the Mount Salem Zone of Special Operation. That's spatial. Data is data except when it's not, right? So we have to understand the role of scale and geoinformatics in defining this. Next slide, please. We are, as a community, we're very used to jumping to conclusions, having anecdotal, reactive types of conclusions without the use of evidence. Last year, we had a situation in Hanover, where on the left is the newspaper report where it quotes the superintendent saying, from all indication, it was as a result of speeding. Yet the formal report says here that the driver of the gray Toyota Corolla motor car lost control for reasons unknown. Okay, so we've jumped to a conclusion before ascertaining the facts. Next slide, please. We have a situation here where we're talking about a death by neglect. A policeman died in St. Catherine. All of the reporting does not once mention the fact that the policeman was driving a taxi, right? All of these things are very important in terms of trying to define what it is we're trying to define. And one of the things that we capture a lot, whether it's going to be crimes or it's going to be traffic incidents, we talk about crime and murder, and we talk about traffic incidents as traffic fatalities. On the right of what you're seeing right now, you're seeing 6 injured in a motor vehicle crash on Spanish Road. You see 20 how many people injured in Grand Spen Road in St. Thomas. Nobody died. And as a result, these are not in the system being recorded and analyzed and predicted. So if you go to the next slide, when you look at the total cost of violence, as we did, we mined hospital records to get not just the people who die. People who die cost the hospital system the least. It's people who are severely injured for the rest of their lives that incur significant costs. And we mine the hospital records to determine cost of x-rays, cost of ICU, cost of blood, cost of pharmaceuticals, and so on. All of this adding up to unintentional injury costs in Jamaica amounting to $12.6 billion per year, the vast majority of which are non-fatal. Next slide, please. All of the, and then you break it down. When you are a motorcycle injury, you cost an average of $263,000 per incident. Whereas if you were in a car, it's a lot less. If you were stabbed versus you were shot, there's a difference in terms of cost of treatment and therefore cost to society and so on. All of these are in hospital records that are mined in order for us to determine what's going on here and how do we respond to it. So what does this mean? The first reaction, again, is that we need more ambulances, we need whatever. The justification of this study was to promote prevention rather than care. Sure, care is very important, but if you spend the same amount of money preventing people from getting injured, the cost benefit is a lot better here. The return on investment is a lot better here. Next slide, please. Then we have stuff like this where curfew imposed in sections of Augustown, and the boundary is defined by an imaginary line for approximately 471 meters, blah, 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 to the steep corner on the hillside. What am I supposed to do with that? You're supposed to measure 471 meters to the steep corner on the hillside. This is 2020, and this is how we're defining space, and this is how decisions are being made based on descriptions. Next slide, please. We have CCTV camera systems all over. These form part of what's called Jamaica Eye. And we're bragging that this thing is really good in solving crime, but it can't solve the fact that people are parking on a yellow line routinely in Barbican Square. You can see this, we can see this, police can see this. This is technology here. But it means nothing if you don't do something about it. So the point is, investments in technology are nice and fancy. Collecting data is all nice and fancy unless we do something with all the components here. I use the analogy of a cake right now. Cake is made up of flour, eggs, and whatever. That's the ingredients. That's data, right? The technology is the oven or whatever you're going to use to cook the cake. The recipe is how you put all the pieces together. And you have to have the chef to make this masterpiece here. We are focusing, and people are trying to sell us ovens, and we are here collecting flour, but we're not synthesizing all this information properly in order to make proper and sound decisions. Because sure, Jamaica Eye can solve crime and all that type of stuff, but it's not promoting the rule of law and reducing chaos right now, where people are operating with impunity, whether or not they're on camera. Next slide, please. We have a situation here where we see cops are against using station diaries, electronic station diaries, because, as this article says here, at my age, I don't want to have to learn to type. This is the problem we're facing in terms of implementation of systems and really converting data into something useful. Next slide, please. This is something that is actually shocking. We recall a year and a half ago about a rape of a hotel guest. And of course, they talk about background checks and whatever. This was in October 2018. We do data mining at Mona GeoInformatics Institute, and we found this thing on Crime Stop Post on March 2. Same person, right? March 2, we got this way. We marked this case and we actually map it, because we actually try to look at where wanted people are based on crowdsourcing, based on information that's out there. And then October, the same guy is wanted for rape. And again, this is out there. You don't need a police record or some kind of thing to just use and mine stuff out there in social media. Next slide, please. Now, as we move on COVID here, this is a problem we have with data and just interpretation of data. This was a front page graph in the Gleaner a couple of weeks ago, where for some reason, 75 is greater than 233. As you can see in that graph, right? I have no idea who makes this graph and what numbers they use. It's because we're not a very numerate society. We don't understand numbers. We don't understand visualization of numbers. We don't understand the implications of having numbers and so on. So it's very important that we as a society talk about investments in STEM, being serious about it, talking about decision making using data in a real way, not lip service right now. Because as we've gotten more sophisticated, the market has gotten more sophisticated, we need to be very serious. I'm almost wrapping up now. Next slide, please. So Kalando spoke about the COVID response by the PSOJ. And then we built a very complex model using 22 different variables, hundreds of thousands of data points to reference what's happening. And the key word here is vulnerable. We're not looking for the poorest community. We're looking for the most vulnerable community. And vulnerability includes poverty, sure, but it also includes people with comorbid situations, the diabetics, the hypertensives, the old people. We're also looking at the employment characteristics of an area. We're looking at whether or not an area has lots of disabled people and so on. 22 different variables were used to combine here. A poor community may not have a lot of old people. So a more vulnerable community would be a community that has poor people and lots of old people. We're looking at population densities all together, not the kind of here is poor people, here is unemployed people, here is sick people, and you sort of have to put the pieces together. It's all wrapped up together, and we were able to determine the top 25 communities in Jamaica, and those are where the PSOJ response activation has jumped in. We end there, but the effort doesn't end there. So JDF has now taken over in identifying those top 25 and then using their logistics for distribution and mobilizing resources into those particular communities. This is not scattershot. This is not because I feel like I should do it. This is something that is very data driven. And next slide, please. This final slide. So these are all the vulnerable communities in Jamaica, and the red areas are the 25 communities. And it's not coincidental that, especially if you look at St. Catherine, that those red areas in St. Catherine, meaning the most vulnerable areas, are also the hotspots for COVID right now. So it's very important that even though the model did not factor in COVID cases, because COVID is a dynamic situation, it was an all-island lockdown, right? It is an all-island curfew. Businesses everywhere are suffering, and therefore a vulnerability model has to factor in everything, not just the COVID cases. When you put the COVID cases on top of that, you begin to see a different level of complexity here. And it's the same thing we're seeing now in Anota Bay, Dover, and Enfield in St. Mary, where those quarantine communities are now squeezed, and then the vulnerability goes up. So thank you very much.
All right, thanks for that look at the, as you said, the ecosystem of data that we operate with here. We were able to look at a little bit of the medical side, road traffic, and then we ended up with some of the COVID stuff. And I want to ask a question here from someone about medical, even though, yeah, I'm going to go to the medical question first from Heather McCoy. How can informatics assist a medical facility and help with strategic planning and forecasting?
Very good. Thank you for that question. Apart from the fact that I'm not a real doctor, the medical operations, just like any business operation here, we're talking whether it's a private medical, and it's something we saw for the COVID response as well. You look at the fact that when we're talking about in the event of a real emergency and a real outbreak, we have to deconcentrate the cases on hospitals. We want to get the milder cases in the health centers.
Right.
And then you want people to go see how can private medical centers offset that. And then you can quarantine, stay at home type of thing. So that's the level of what the response would do. But of course then, and I'm sure you're going to be asking Larry this question later, there are going to be issues of logistics. How do you move people from point A to point B without infecting everybody in between?
Right.
We have seen the where issue come up long before COVID, where Jamaican people, and we did situations where we were analyzing pregnant women, that pregnant women would travel vast distances to go to their favorite doctor. We saw cases of people traveling from Chapelton, Clarendon to, I think it was Hope Bay, or this is Portland. They're traveling to Portland because their doctor is now in Portland. So you see those kind of things. How can you improve service delivery? Maybe that's a very good thing that this is such a good doctor that has such a loyal patient. But we're talking a pregnant woman here. There's blood pressure checks can be taken much closer. We're talking about how do you access services for people with sickle cell, people with diabetes and chronic illnesses, versus how do you address issues of pharmaceutical provisions, and how do people go to the nearest pharmacy to home or to work? All of these things are where questions that geoinformatics is able to answer.
In terms of a medical facility, and even with the outbreak, I mean, a company like Medical Disposables and so on, who provide they provide supplies to these medical centers or hospitals and whatever, and so they would also, be able to use that information to determine their own routes of delivery. If there's an outbreak here, it's likely that these spaces are going to be overrun by people needing services, and so the supplies might go. So they are able to use that to say, okay, well, let's change our route and make sure that these medical facilities on this route are stocked in this way, because now the demand for these particular things are going to be greater. Yeah.
And these suppliers also have suppliers themselves. So there's a whole, I mean, not just in Jamaica, we're talking global logistics and supply chains, right? And then even drifting beyond everything else, we do have situations where environmental issues of drought, of hurricanes, all of these things are operating in this system that has a very strong spatial component.
I can give, if you don't mind, Colando, an example.
Yeah, Larren, I'm going to, just before you speak, Larren, I do want the Olivine to know that we're going to ask her a question. But yes, Larren, respond.
Right. And this supports Parris. I don't think I've told Parris this story before. But the first time I realized the power of data was I was working at a company that processes health insurance claims. And I remember several occasions looking at pharmacy transactions coming of drugs being dispensed. And I would say notice an increase in flu medication being dispensed in Ocherios. And I would immediately know to call my dad, who lives in Montego Bay, and tell him specifically to start taking vitamin C medication or vitamins, because I knew based on data that flu would get to Montego Bay in 2 weeks.
Wow.
And he would never listen to me, of course, but just being able to imagine the type of preventative medicine that the government could do if they were paying attention to pharmacy dispensations and what drugs were being dispensed to spot an outbreak or possible outbreak of the flu or dengue or any type of disease.
Like that. Okay, so I'm going to take a question. Thanks, Larren, from Heather McCoy. No, not Heather. Heather had a follow-up question to the medical facility question. She says, what kinds of external data do you recommend would assist us in business development and planning? External data, she asked.
To who? To me, Larry?
Well, yeah, because it was a follow-up question to the informatics question about medical facilities.
All right, so there are many different things. I mean, one of the key things, especially as it deals with chronic disease, we need to continue monitoring demographic patterns, trends of old people, young people, trends of lifestyle diseases, of fast food, of exercise, those types of elements that are going to be very important. Larren gave a very important comment a while ago concerning using claims information, using that kind of stuff to help drive, to see what transactions are happening in certain areas.
Right.
It's something that is very important. The information that you have is valuable, but there's also information outside there. And when you put them together, it really becomes, gold. And how this is leveraged as a data analytics business versus a data analytics consumer, all of this has value that we need to be able to leverage properly.
And an example of how BlueDot has collaborated with Parris to answer that question is there was and you can chime in, Parris, there was a pizza franchise that were considering coming into Jamaica. And we used secondary data that MGI has to be able to tell the franchise exactly where to put their stores or their franchise locations based on the traffic in the area, the amount of other places of interest that were surrounding those particular areas. They had a particular interest in schools, so we're able to tell them within a 5-mile radius what schools were nearby. They had, and there was crime data that were added to it, the general demographic data, and then BlueDot went out and profiled the people, the residents in the particular area, to be able to arrive at a specific location or location set for them, specifically telling them if you put your stores here, then you will see X amount of customers either walking in or based on the traffic driving by here, and then you can grab their attention from that.
Okay.
Kalanda?
Yes, Larry, go ahead.
If I could comment here, we spoke a little earlier about supply chain analytics.
Yeah.
And I think any company, let you be a distributor or a retail outlet or a small shop, supply chain is really, really critical to make money, to get the proper turnover of your goods and to get your goods into source, into the outlets. Now, if we take the example recently of the lockdown of Portmore or the St. Catherine area, now all distribution companies have their supply chain well planned, and this is done from the customer back. So a customer will tell you that you can deliver on a Monday and another distributors on a Tuesday in the morning, midday, and afternoon. So the supply chain really works well. Now, when they brought down and put the quarantine into St. Catherine, it would be reasonable to think that nobody was thinking of the supply of goods getting in, because the back end of a supermarket is really pretty pure. You can control the social distances and it works regularly. So by limiting, for example, supply chains of the distributors going into let's use the large retail shops and the wholesalers to Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, it disrupted everything, and there was massive communication that had to go on, because company A may have been delivering on a Monday and they can no longer deliver on a Monday. And the back end didn't really concern the front end, which was a concern of the consumers coming in. So I think in just looking, when decisions are being made, and I think this is the same point that, Parris and Larry was trying to make, is just don't look at it that you're trying to isolate it, because people have to eat, you have to get food in. Yeah. So if you really had persons who understand the logistical network going in, you didn't have to trouble the salesperson and the delivery trucks going into the 50 outlets in St. You could have left that alone and that was clean, and just control the consumer going in, and then you would have had a much, much cleaner transition. And I believe that this is really where information and data is available. But if you're not in that space and understand how businesses work, you can bring down the shutters with good intention, and you cause massive disruption and fear. Another one is Coronation Market. Hundreds of thousands of people live downtown. And when they finish work, they get on a bus, they go through, they get their ground provisions, and they head home. When you lock a curry at 5 o'clock, they are in trouble. They don't have enough food because they don't have the resources to buy 2-3 weeks of food. They buy the food, they go home and they cook. And this is why the joint JCC, JMEA, and PSOJ has made the recommendation, move it till 5 o'clock in the morning and 8 o'clock in the evening. What that means is a 7-to-7 shift, or is no longer in trouble, because somebody can't leave home at 6 to get there at 7. They don't have motor, they're taking public transportation. So and the time. So, I think sometimes we have to, and the truth is we were in a crisis and they didn't know, but that's the importance of having people on your team that understands, having somebody who runs a supermarket on the team, so they know how it works, having somebody who runs a distribution company so they can understand the supply chain and the logistics. Because the fact is, if the distributor doesn't get it, if the supermarket doesn't open, the people are going to starve.
And then we have a new problem that we need to
problem.
Right. Okay, Larren, we're going to go back, and I don't know if you're going to be able to make this point for Olivine. Is that her name? Burke?
Yep.
Question.
Dr. Olivine Burke. Yes.
What percentage of SMEs, I think because you had said about 10% of businesses are using that. She was saying what percentage of SMEs businesses are included in that 10%? And the 10% of those who use, they wanted to know how many SMEs you're accounting for. Can you tell? Can you disaggregate like that?
No, what I can say is that 95% of all, I think that was the last statistic I heard, over 90% of all the registered businesses on the stock, registered at the tax office are MSMEs. So if you could extrapolate and looking at my client list, which has probably 2 SMEs on it, then I'd say it's even less that are using any type of analytics. I don't know if Parris agrees with me, or Larry.
No, but I think Dr. Burke is the head of Mona Social Services Limited, and she had a very good and excellent feel for these types of organizations, especially those operating in more difficult areas. And these are the areas where the innovations and whatever are going to be vital in bringing people out of poverty and so on. And this is the kind of thing where where organizations such as ours have to incorporate the perspectives of specialists outside the technological profession to begin to make a solution that is real and able to take root in certain areas and to promote real change from within, not a top-down approach.
Okay, and then Vaughn was saying, good point from BlueDot, but how do we get there at the point that government use the information to benefit the people? I think to some extent, Parris, you were talking about.
Yeah, I think Parris is best suited to answer that.
Yeah, government policy and all of that.
You see, one of the things we have to be very clear and unambiguous about is, again, my cake analogy, right? We're so obsessed with getting that oven and we're so obsessed with getting flour. We don't know how to cook and we don't have the right cooks in place. It's going to require a culture change to let us understand where our deficiencies are. We have to be willing to bring in the right cooks and to bring in the right recipes to get this thing done properly. I think we are all, Larren and I, Larry, all of us can do what we can do. I know the team at MCS and Dwayne and you guys do what you do. But we have to be able to, if we're going to be serious about digital transformation and we're going to be serious about whatever, it's not just about spending money on a software system only, but we have to be able to take it a lot further. And I think once we realize that, things will flow.
Okay, I hope that the question we were able to answer that question. So I'm going to go on to a couple more things. You can just checking to see if we have any additional questions. Not right now. Marketing and market segmentation for even informatics. If we could specifically speak to that, Parris, and I think we're going to come down to just providing the attendees with some very practical ways of getting started. But there was one question here that I had about the extent to which geoinformatics, and I think you might have said it in some degree, but if you could sort of more precisely look at how using informatics can help with your segmentation. I think Larren gave an example with the pizza company wanting to come into the market and, sort of going directly at. But is there anything else that it could be used for?
No, absolutely. No, you see what happens when you're dealing with a where question. Now, Napoleon Bonaparte said, where is the most important question, right? Strategically, tactically, it's all about the where. And then from that, you can figure out the how and the what and the why or whatever. Now that you know where also has scales. We're talking about Jamaica, we're talking about parish, we're talking about community, we're talking about property, we're talking about a room in your house. All of these things are different scales of space, right? So when you are able to begin to discriminate by space, by where, you are now able to begin then to discriminate by sector. You can discriminate it by size of business, market, demographics, income bracket. All of those things are going to be important. But where these people are is going to be an important element. Where your risks are is going to be an important element. Where your opportunities are. And a very important element to be consistent in terms of the fundamental characteristics of any business. Businesses are supposed to make money, reduce their costs, and to be compliant. And now we're going to be talking about a post-COVID world where compliance is going to take all different kinds of dimensions and, health and safety and sanitize this and that and spacing and mask and all these things. Regulation and compliance is going to be a whole different ball game going forward. We need to figure out how do you incorporate the logistics of mass, the logistics of all of these additional supplies and so on. How is that going to operate? Reducing costs is important and increasing sales through these new opportunities. You can't really have delivery options without understanding the logistics of delivery. Because if I live in Kingston and I want something from a food place in Montego Bay, I mean, what are you gonna do? You're gonna find out that I live in Kingston, and that's when you cancel my order. Yeah, you have to know these types of things. You have loyalty cards and these kinds of programs that provide information on your customer. You have information that is available out there. If you have 100 people in your community and you have 1,000 people in your loyalty card, that tells you something. People from outside coming to you, right? If it's the other way around, then you're really a local business. You know, you can begin to figure stuff out using the where. But again, I defer to Larren in terms of the operationalizing and in the field components of this.
Well, I tell you, with respect to segmentation and marketing, I think one of the new normals that's going to come about over the next couple of years, if it is that we don't get a solution to this crisis, marketing of persons who supply, for example, the supermarket chain. A lot of their marketing happens in supermarket, tasting new product launches, and the aisle displays. You know, a lot of activity goes on in the supermarket space. A lot of activity goes on in squares and on the road, you know, in halfway tree, and that's where people really do their marketing activity. Now, a percentage goes there, a percentage goes to social media, some go on radio and TV, etc., etc. But I think that whole landscape is going to change. I mean, curbside parking, I'm sure, you know, if you had a supermarket and you used to do 1,000 persons a day walking through, you maybe now down to what, 100 or 200. So I think the whole landscape of both the retail sector and the brand building sector is going to change. Now, in America, for example, in the States, you have Amazon. So if you wear a particular type of shirt, you know, brothers, you know the size and you know you can buy a medium, extra large or whatever, and you know it's going to fit. But if you want to switch to Penguin, you're not going to know how Penguin fits. So in America, you can send it back at no charge. But if you order it in Jamaica, what's going to happen? The whole retail space, the whole landscape, you know, how people market, how people operate, you know, the supermarkets. I mean, these guys have big overheads. You know, they have what, 10, 20, 30,000 square feet air conditioned blasting. You know, and when you reduce the number of persons, the easiest one is the airlines. You know, they're not going to be able to have a full plane, buses, trains. I mean, the whole landscape of every business, unless we get this thing under control, it's really a new normal going forward. And there are going to be opportunities in certain areas, and some places will never make it back. But it's going to be interesting. And I think data and really looking at things with fresh eyes and, you know, not being stuck to what was, but what can be and where you can go. And I think that's the message, you know, Parris is saying, the where, you know, just come, break the shell and just open up your possibilities and look forward and look at it with clear, fresh eyes.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to acknowledge Dwayne Russell, GM of MP Systems, was joined, and he did make two comments. Parris, on one, he said we need to increase our investment in STEM or STEAM. I think that was in relation to something that you were talking about, that policy issue. He said, well said, Parris. And also there was an idea about businesses developing their own communities. Larry, I don't know if you want to respond to that comment. Businesses should also develop their communities. As far as, I think he was responding to, I don't know if Dwayne could just kind of elaborate what part he was speaking to there.
That sounds like a CSR comment, I think. But just to, in the meantime, until he clarifies, just to add to the segmentation question, one of the things that I have noticed, or we have noticed at BlueDot, is that understanding the need to do segmentation and primarily understand the difference between their customers and the consumers. So, and how you market to the customer versus the consumer after understanding that. So, you know, in Larry's business, the customer are the parents that are buying the sweets and the confectionery, but the consumers are the kids. So who do you as a business market to? Do you get the kids to influence the parents who are the customers, or do you influence the customers to make the purchases? So, you know, that's one area of segmentation, and maybe Larry can also comment on that. And then also, since Larry mentioned the supermarkets, just throwing out an important or not important, there's some insights that we found last year in reviewing some supermarket data. We realized that what they call the average weight of purchase decreased, which is essentially the basket size or the amount of items that consumers purchase at the supermarket, but the frequency of visits increased. And after doing some more research and understanding, it was as a result of the plastic ban. Because if you think about it, people are now going into supermarkets, they've left their bags, they don't want to purchase one, so they're really just purchasing what it is that they need, and they're walking out with items in their hands. But it also means that as a result of that, they're going back to the supermarket 2 or 3 times a week. And that is true for even in my own circumstance. I'm always leaving my bags, right?
Yes.
I think that's a very, very good point. And if I could comment here, right? Because I think one knows that supermarkets maybe at Crossroads is a lower tilt check than one in Ligani. And I think we have online, I'll call her out, Catherine Kennedy, the general manager of High-Low. And, she really would have the insights, because you are correct, people are, with this bag thing. And I know that downtown, and uptown, you have a different, somebody would want to spend $10,000 or $20,000 downtown, yet still people go more regularly in other geographic areas.
Yeah, but I mean, you just put it in a box. That's what I do when I forget my bag. Or they just put it right in the car. I'll just pack it out when I get home, because I forget the bag all the time. Because I'm not buying anymore.
You can afford the $200 to get a bag every time. There are many people.
No, I don't do that. I'm saying I don't buy any more bag. I just tell them to bring it out and just put them in the car on the seat, and I'll pack it out. Because I can't afford to buy a bag every time. All right, so Dwayne, first let me apologize, folks. Dr. Lyew-Ayee had to run, and so he's no longer with us, but we do still have Larry and Larren who can respond to the questions that you might have. I think Dwayne did make okay, so he added to the point. I'm just going to read it. He says, businesses should increase revenues, okay, reduce profits, etc., but also focus on developing their communities. Okay. Okay, I think I kind of understand where he's going there now in terms of using that data to grow that community base that they have. All right, so the thing I wanted to get to know, Larren especially, is, yeah, we've talked about it, and I'm sure many business people that are in attendance now would be looking and thinking, okay, yeah, I can see how I could use this data and so on and so forth, but getting started is the thing. And to me, my first question is, how accessible or expensive is this service to begin to bring that into my organization? And obviously, that's a cost I have to think about if I'm thinking about surviving now and making plans for the future. Larren, how do we go forward with accessing the kind of data you're talking about? Sorry, Dr. Lyew-Ayee not here to respond to access geoinformatics and how affordable that is.
So like I said, our mission at BlueDot is to change the culture of that gut decision making, or that instinct decision making that we're accustomed to. So we've through technology we've facilitated or enabled the massive reductions in the cost of market research. But before I get into that, like I started to say earlier, there are several ways in which companies can today just start to better understand their customers. One of them is social media. So social media is your largest focus group. You have a lot of companies who have pages, who have Instagram pages, Twitter accounts, Facebook pages, who aren't even engaging with their customers in that manner. People leave comments, they mention you, and we're culturally now, especially millennials and Gen Zs, they're accustomed to giving feedback online or leaving feedback online, whether to you directly or just generally. And it's an important tool to just be able to analyze what is being said about you online. And companies should implement programs where they encourage that type of engagement, so keeping abreast of what is being said on social media is important. So I said that's one. Secondly, we all have existing data. Most businesses are collecting some amount of data, whether that be transactional data or slash sales data or HR data, whatever the data is you're collecting. There are nuggets, literal gold nuggets in your existing data sources. So even before you go out and do some research, I would encourage that you look at what data you have currently, and then find someone or some business that can help you to understand what it is that you have your existing data. There's several a lot of insight that you can get from just looking at what your existing data. And then outside of that, it would be also thinking about, what decisions do you need to make now that you can't make because you don't have the data. And then once you determine that, then you put in the systems in place to collect that data. So if it is that you want to be able to target to the hyper targeting, then you need to be collecting profile information on your customers. So basic demographics, but also interests, likes, etc. An example that I always give is, the supermarket that I shop at. Every Friday I purchase honey bunches of oats, right? And the supermarket, they are collecting they do have a loyalty program, so they are collecting my information. But yet they've never ever sent me any promotional material for milk or some other type of cereal or some other product in the cereal category. All right. So we do have a lot of businesses here who currently have these databases. They're just not mining them or analyzing the data sets. But to answer your question specifically, Kalando, we at BlueDot, like I said, through technology, we have made it one of our points of duty to reduce the cost of market research. So through our communal platform, which is the online panel that I mentioned earlier, we can now do studies for as little as 120,000 Jamaican dollars, which is unheard of. Average research traditionally costs anywhere between 1.6 million and upwards. But we've brought the cost of market research down significantly. Of course, that's for a smaller sample size. But, and again, there's multimodal ways of going about collecting the data that you want. It could just be observational studies. One very famous, and I'll close now, popular observational study that is done is cigarette companies, for example. They will literally send teams out on streets near bars and have them pick up the cigarette butts and then count them, right? That also tells them competitor information. So you have one craven, you have a bag full of cigarette butts, and you have 20 Craveney and 10 Matterhorn, then you know what your market share is from that. So there's several ways that you can.
Thank Larren, and we have some information here from Amanda, who's saying business or organization should also be encouraged to look within for insights. A lot of internal data is locked away in spreadsheets, etc. This is free and valuable information that, when analyzed effectively, can show you what you're missing or what you're doing well or underperforming in what areas, or available resources and skill sets. So
Definitely.
Yeah, thanks for that, Amanda. That's another good point to add right there. Now, one quick thing I wanted to just check with you guys. So we know that in some countries, they are using apps and location data to track citizens as part of how they're fighting or addressing this issue of COVID-19 spread. And the data is actually able to help them to make some precise decision with regard to contact tracing, and clearly that's one of the containment measures. How do we feel about something like that happening here?
So I can answer this question from two angles. So I'm part of a group by the name of Citizens Response Jamaica that would have we're doing things like building ventilators, etc. And part of what we've done is we have built the app to do contact tracing, right? But also, again, to answer your question, I think there has been a lot of fear mongering around data and privacy. I think the media has done a terrible job or a good job at instilling, the fear of data and privacy. Not that it is not an issue, but if you take, for example, the backlash around needs, Facebook and Google have more information on us and are able to profile us in more ways than needs ever will, right? They're already collecting this, all of this data on us, and data in most cases is used as a force for good. So one example would be, you see the price of TVs going down, right? So now you can get a 65-inch TV for $350 US. That is because the TVs are selling your usage data to companies like Netflix and HBO, etc. On a large scale level, but there's no private or personal data that they're collecting on it. There's no harm in them looking at what your patterns are, what your big consumer behavior is, what shows you're watching, and then selling that data to companies that will use that data to improve the services and the solutions that they provide to us as consumers. So, I mean, of course, one could say that from BlueDot we have a biased position, but I think we need to understand what data can be used for as a country and as a people, and the benefits of that. And at the same time, of course, ensuring that the data is protected and privacy is ensured and all of that. But data can be used as more of a force for good than anything else.
All right, thanks, Larren. Larry, I don't know if you wanted to comment on the use of that type of app to help with the containment, tracking, contact tracing, etc.
I mean, on a personal level, I'm very, very much in support of it. I see it has had success, in some countries. I think they fly in the ointment. You have a full spectrum of persons, some on one side that fully supports it, and you have the rights, the rights people who say, boy, you're invading my privacy. And this came up in the whole tabling of the NIDS in Jamaica, and felt we were going too far. I don't really have a comment from that point of view, but I think it's good information, and the fact that companies have monetized services that go through. If, for example, Facebook, Google, Instagram, you wouldn't be getting it free if they didn't have that back-end data to pass on to commercial enterprises or political enterprises to use. So we have to realize that we get it free because of that. The question is how much of the data should be and it can morally be used, because as has come out, you click I agree, and you don't read the 30-page document what you're agreeing to. So a very controversial subject, but certainly I think in this type of quote-unquote national emergency, I would go full steam ahead at it. But that's a very, very personal opinion, because I would take any steps necessary to find a solution and to reduce this COVID pandemic.
Thank you, Larry. Okay, we've got some questions. Well, two more. Keisha A. Anderson, people need to be educated on that. Data can be captured in different ways using social media, etc. And Joseph is saying, true, when all is said and done, to be data-driven starts at the very top of the company. So this is putting that whole decision back in the hands of the CEO. And as we wrap, I wanted to there's a question I had for Larren in particular. How he would have pointed out the fact that you can start using social media data to help. Is there, and one of our guests here would have shared that people can start to look internally and use other type of data. Is there anything else that you would want to add at this point, Larren? Because we're going to wrap, and after you, I'm going to ask Larry to give me, what would you say to businesses? How would you encourage them to begin to make that investment where an investment is required? And whether it be a people investment, because in the case of what Amanda said, if somebody is now going to pull a team together to go look at all those files that are put away and to determine, okay, let's try and look at some transaction data or look at some customer trends in terms of their buying behavior. That example Larren gave about where he buys his cereal and how they could begin to target. How do how do they make that kind of step now? And what kind of investments can they make now that will help them later on?
So the question to me, sorry, Calendar, the question to me is, what part of it?
Well, actually, you could do both. What as far as things additional things apart from the two you gave, social media and the one we picked up from Amanda, is there anything else that companies could do right now to start to make themselves more data driven and a little bit more data resilient?
No, I think I covered most of it, but to summarize, it would be look at social media, establish some sort of social media presence, and start to engage with your consumers. Hopefully, they're in the demographic that are online. 2, look at your existing data sources, databases. But primarily, you should be asking your questions: what decisions am I making today? Important decisions am I making today that I'm making with guts? Or what decisions do I need to make that I cannot make because I don't have the right amount of data? And then work backwards and put in systems, data capture systems, to get you that information. So it could be that now you just have a cash register that doesn't collect demographic information. You need to upgrade that system and put in a system that allows you to collect a little bit more information. So age, address, sex, all of that type of information. And that allows you to start building out a profile. And then once you start to build a profile, then you can start to tie that to what their purchase behavior is and what their purchase patterns are. So, if you have a clothing store, are they buying jeans or shirts, and then should you then stock up on shirts just for them, and should you be sending them marketing material specific to jeans, right? So it all starts with the decision making. So what decisions do you need to make that believe that you cannot make without having access to the data? I hope I answered the question.
Yes, you definitely did. I like that endpoint. What decisions do you need to make that you can't make without data? And then work backwards from that to get the data you need, whether it be by implementing some sort of data capture system, reviewing existing data sources, or bringing in your social media and other digital content like that. Larry, how do you encourage your fellow business leaders, business owners to get going so that the number is no longer 10%, but we can speak to a larger number of people who, folks like Parris and Larren believe are using more data to make the decisions in their business?
Thank you. I think one of the things, every journey begins with a step. And I think the important thing to communicate is that, information and data analytics is very important. I think when you mention, for example, how much you spend and whatever, and when you look at the SME category, a large company is that with $425 million a year, I think. In the SME, a small company, maybe it's $15 million a year in sales. So a lot of our landscape are very small companies that want to know information. So when you can get research down to $120,000, that's really a good start, because you're really making it applicable to a very large segment of the population of the businesses that are out there that's looking for answers, because they are going by gut, they are going by what they feel and know, and that's within their sphere of influence and within their ecosystem. So I think the kind of technology that we have that has been spoken about earlier is really the start of reaching out to persons, getting together to to work together to do it. I know in the old, omnibuses, for example, you can buy question by question, but today with technology, online surveys, etc., it's becoming easy. And places like the Chamber of Commerce and other business organizations stand ready to help to guide people in the direction that will help them build their business.
All right, and that's where we've got to leave the discussion today. That's a wrap on our discussion today and, in fact, our webinar series. I say thank you very much to Larren Peart, CEO BlueDot, Larry Watson, immediate past president of JCC and GM of Industrial Sales Limited, a member company of the separate group. And we did have Dr. Parris Lyew-Ayee Jr, director of Mona GeoInformatics Institute at the University of the West Indies. He had to run, but we are grateful that he was able to spend some time to help us to understand the things that we did about geoinformatics, and the fact that one of the things from my conversation with him that he wanted to, really make the point that the data can help you to, oftentimes people look at yesterday's data and treat data as, okay, this is what happened, versus using it for the type of modeling that can help you to figure out what could happen, what might happen or what could happen next week, 2 weeks down the road. And so that's definitely one of the very valuable uses of data. Staying in business during and after COVID-19. That was our aim, to provide folks with information, tools, technologies that can help them to stay in business during and after COVID-19. And we hope that these discussions have provided that. We did promise we'll send an email. I am asking again for some feedback. If you could put some feedback in the chat. I am about to announce the winner. We have a giveaway of a $5,000 voucher for someone to get some fresh local produce delivered to you by Farmgate Jamaica E-Market. And the winner of that is Amanda McKenzie. Is Amanda still with us? Can we hear her voice? Amanda, still on the call? She's gonna put something in the chat. Amanda McKenzie is our winner. Oh, okay, still here. Fantastic, fantastic. Congratulations, Amanda. Thank you for participating. This is why we were acknowledging you today. On behalf of MC Systems and the partners, the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce, the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association, and the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica, I thank you for attending today's session. We trust the information was useful to you. As we promised, I don't know if there's anyone repeat attendees, but we did promise we will publish an EMAG with insights and information from all our sessions that will help to empower you to take action so that you can stay in business now and after COVID has ended, or COVID has pivoted us into our new normal. So you can look out for that in your email. We are going to send a pack, putting in information from all these gentlemen and other presenters that have joined us in the other two sessions, so that you can benefit from that. If you're seeking other tech-related solutions for your business, you can reach out to solutions@mcsystems.com. And this is where we say goodbye. As usual, in this time of mask wearing, corona, quarantine, and curfews, we remind you to practice physical distancing, even as we remain socially connected and beat COVID. I'm Kalando. Good evening. Good afternoon. Have a good one.
Bye.